Good morning. Finance Committee will please come to order. Welcome, everybody. Any citizens signed up to address the committee today? There being none, we'll move on to item 3, consideration of the minutes from the April 4 meeting. I had one minor change that Leanne found, and she's already fixed it regarding a name. And so we have a motion by Dr. Weber, a second by Mr. Bose. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. CFO report, Ms. Clark.
Good morning. This morning, I would like to introduce our new Senior Vice President of Finance, Laura Thomas. She has been with us, I believe this is her 3rd week. She's been to an executive retreat and through orientation, so she's made it through both.
Most importantly, she went to the retreat and she came back.
She did.
That's an incredible sign.
She's seen our true colors.
Well, welcome.
She comes from, most recently, from Cincinnati. She was at Bon Secours Mercy, and she has both her accounting degree and an IT degree. So, information systems management degree. So if you have any trouble with your iPad, you can ask her. But Laura is going to be over several of our areas, kind of the traditional controller. You guys met Courtney Bodecker last month. That's a direct report to her. So she has accounting, accounts payable, payroll, financial planning, budget, and all of the supply chain and the materials management function. So I'm very glad to have her here. Do you want me to go ahead and move on into, all right. So I will tell you that we had one more month of really positive results financially for March. That's always nice to say what a difference a year makes. Yeah, are we done with the financial report now?
Moving right along, yeah.
So I'm going to bore you with a couple of statistics. I will tell you that our volumes were down slightly, both from an inpatient admission as well as our outpatient volumes, which include our ancillary functions as well as some of the clinics and outpatient surgery. So our admissions were down slightly by about 3%. Patient days trended along with that. Our CMI down at the bottom left, we closed at about 3.2% ahead of our budget. And that is one of the higher CMIs that we've seen in quite a while. Again, it's based on their discharge. Medicare establishes a case mix index for the acuity of the patient. So the more resources that a patient may consume, they would get a higher CMI based on their diagnosis. Our length of stay was a little bit higher. It was about 5% higher, which follows the case mix index. On our emergency department, we did finish the month about 1% lower than budget, but you can see we were well above last month. We were well above last month if you look at the blue bars month to month. Our urgent care visits were high at about 7% higher, and again, that is a high for about 12 months. Our primary care clinic visits were about 5% under, and then our specialty clinic visits remain over budget for the year. This month they were about 1% higher. So some of our other statistics, our OBS cases were up this month. You can see that our invasive lab cases were down, but I will point out when we do our budget, we try to look at last year's volume and how it was spread. And you'll notice in the yellow, the middle bar here, last year we had a really high point. So we trended about the same as we did last month, but I think here the anomaly is the extra high budget for March. Our inpatient surgeries are trending nicely, 9% over for the month. And I'll note that they are 13% over year-to-date for the first 6 months of the year. Our outpatient surgeries are catching up to our budget. We were about 1% under, and year-to-date, we were about 4%. So you can see there's a trend of getting those surgeries a little closer to budget. In our psychiatric area for mental health, patient days were strong, right on budget. Our clinic visits, as you can see, were slightly under budget, but they were right on budget. They were 0.1% under, which turns the box yellow, but as a reminder, the yellow box is somewhere less than 3% under budget. The red box is something more than 3% under. Green means that is equal to or exceeds the budget. The psych emergency visits, you can see that those are high for the month. And our partial hospitalization is trending about where it was last month and for the year.
Sure, is that more than just a few months high on psych emergency visits? That looks like a bigger number than we've seen in a long time.
It is, and there have been some redirections from the ED back up to the psych emergency clinic. So we're appropriately getting the patients in the right location, but we know why that number is a little bit higher, and it will probably trend to be higher since that new process was implemented.
You have a patient that enters into the emergency department, we evaluate them, are they booked as an emergency department patient even if we take them to psych or we take them?
So if they have any kind of a medical issue that's happening with them, they stay in the emergency department on the first floor of the pavilion. If they are psych only, after they're evaluated, I believe they go on up to the emergency. But they're stable. If there's any kind of a medical issue, they are kept in the medical ED with psych evaluation.
Can you bill them twice?
We do not. They only get one ED charge. So.
Good.
On our financial metrics, our days cash on hand, following a very same kind of trend line that we see. If you remember, we get our bigger cash payments in January, February for all of our property taxes. It is at $239 this month. Our total days cash on hand is actually at $289, and the difference there again is the future fund monies that we have pulled aside. So this graph is what is not earmarked. This graph includes all the restricted funds and would relate closer to an external agency like S&P who would calculate our days. So I wanted to show you both calculations in case you tried to compare. Our net accounts receivable days have fallen by about 3 days, which is no small feat. I'm going to attribute Rory is really watching that. That's his metric. He watches it, and we're doing some things to try to lower that.
That's great.
What was our goal for that?
For AR days, we're actually gonna, and I'll talk to you about that next month, but the last time I looked at it about a year ago, we were right in the median of where a normal hospital resides. So I think 50 days is relatively good, kind of the median. The problem is that we have about 45% of Medicare and Medicaid, and once you bill Medicare and Medicaid, they typically pay quickly, like within 14 days. You have another component of about 15% of our total bills are going to commercially insured patients. They don't pay as quickly, and then we have the patient responsibility after the insurance pays. So those processes sometimes will go for 120 days, and then they also go out to collection. Over that course of that, as time expires, those accounts are less and less collectible, especially the patient responsibility. We're also working appeals on both Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial. So, but we actually start to reserve each month a little more as an account ages. We don't write it off. That's an accrual thing that happens on the financial statements, but it's included in here. And after about 180 days, unless we have a strong appeal working, all of those accounts will be reserved for. So there's no surprise.
Great,
And
thank
then,
you.
yeah, and when we recover those reserved accounts, it just goes to the bottom line.
And Sharon, you and I talked about at the point of what we measure is the point of service is to pay, not the point of billing, right?
Correct.
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to see the metric on how long, from the point of service to the point we bill, is that within industry norms as well?
So it is, JPS had, last year, Bill and I really worked with the operations team to go through a charge capture process. There were some pockets where we were not billing dropping those bills within 4 to 7 days, which is the industry norm. And we made great progress back in 18. So we watch how long it takes to get those charges in and get coding done so that we can drop a bill.
Got it, okay.
So we could probably improve on that slightly, but we've made great strides in the last 12 or 15 months. And then I always like to point out our FTEs per adjusted patient day is favorable. Again, this kind of tells us how many hours we work for every adjusted patient day. So we're a little bit more efficient than planned on our labor hours. And then, of course, those translate into dollars on the income statement. It represents over half of our total operating expenses. So that's a really important number. Here's our payer mix. I went through that by memory earlier. I probably should have flipped to the graph to make sure that I was right. But again, this doesn't change a whole lot. Connection is effectively our self-pay population that has been qualified under the county indigent program. So we have a large amount of self-pay. And our enrollment, we had quite a successful enrollment this month. It went up by about 6%, so we're just over 40,652.
And our year over year is good too, from March.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we are back higher than we've been since December of 17.
What do you attribute that to?
You know, there are a lot of efforts that have been going on with our enrollment, and I don't think one thing really popped out.
Good number.
It is a good number.
It's me.
Yeah, it's Steve. We know Steve's watching it, so. Yes. It's his favorite graph.
Well, you're in charge of the disconnection program.
So for the month of March, we did have a really strong, I don't know why that's not sticking. We really did have a strong month. We finished about $840,000 ahead of a $700,000 budget. A lot of that, again, is in expense savings. We were able to hold down quite a few expenses. We did have kind of a negative volume. We talked about admissions being down. You saw some of the other outpatient services being down. That is what is attributing to this lower revenue number of about $3 million. From an operating expense, we were able to save $3.9 million compared to budget. Our salaries were favorable. Our benefits, I'd like to point out, were favorable. We have seen a positive trend in our benefits for the last 2 months where they're actually under our operating budget. So 3 months makes a trend, and we're going to be watching for April. But that brings our health insurance pretty much back into line for the year, so that's exciting. Our purchase service is right on target, and we've had the biggest savings in the supply category. That includes our medical supplies, our blood products. We've had some savings in some of our implants. So that number would be a permanent number. There is some small IT software of about 400 that might be some timing in that number, but most of that is our medical supplies. Year to date, I have about a $6 million excess of budget, so we're sitting a little over $10 million for the first 6 months of the year, and that's very encouraging. Again, volumes are a little bit low from a patient standpoint, so you would expect the revenue to follow. We had to make up earlier in the year about $2.2 million from the FY18 UC payment. We've already done that. We got that final information after the year was closed and the audit was done. So that is already accounted for and will not have any further impacts for the year. And then our savings, again, is about $12 million. Again, the biggest part is in purchase services. There's probably about $2 million of that attributed to the outside medical services for our mental health. As we are at capacity, we have community partners that we will work to place psychiatric patients. Zelia and her team made some operational changes early on in the year, and that's produced a significant savings for us. The supplies continue to be over. Again, most of that I think is permanent. There are some, still about $400,000 of minor equipment and things that might be timing. Are there any questions on the medical center? Okay. Moving on to a claim for the month. From a build encounter standpoint, a claim was about 2% ahead of their budget. So they're trending really well on their targets. Their net operating expenses per encounter, which is really just a function of how expensive is it for me to see a patient. They are at 100% year to date, and they're actually at 100% for the month. You can see that blue line's right on their budget. Again, this is just for your information. It's probably easier to read on your portal, but this is a nice array of all the specialties that a claim contracts with and employs. So for the month, a claim had a slightly favorable, but right on budget. So that was good. Again, most of these trends are not new for this month, and with the increase of the 2% encounters, you have a 2% increase in net patient service revenue. Their salaries were slightly over. We did have some incentive payouts, as well as they're kind of settling into some of their new compensation structures. Their benefits trended pretty close, and we had some slight overages in total operating expenses, but pretty much netted out. Year to date, a claim is about 1.7 million ahead of their 12 million budget. Are there any questions on a claim? Okay. My favorite thing to point out today is going to be the fact that we are actually, as a system, for the first 6 months of our year, breaking even from a combined standpoint. I can't draw over there because all my controls are covering it. But if you look over in the column, the income loss from operations is $354,000 on the total column on the right, compared to about an $8 million budgeted loss as a system. So from my standpoint, that's a good number to see. Yeah.
Our standpoint as well.
Good.
Any questions for Sharon on this? All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to accept Ms. Clark's report. A motion by Mr. Powell, second by Dr. Weber. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sharon. Dr. Duncan, we're going to move to, are you done?
Yeah, I'm doing item number B, the foundation agreement.
My apologies. Thank
No,
you.
that's okay. I'll sit here till you call me. So for your consideration, we have the intercompany agreement that the medical center has with the foundation. We talked about this during my budget presentation, but as a reminder, the fundraising and the grant expenses, so salaries, rent, all of the overhead of the foundation is funded by the JPS Medical Center. We also flow through the Connection Supplemental Program. We've had that before I got here, so probably about 5 years that's been operational. And total is about $1.8 million. In return, the foundation fundraises. You can see on your executive summary, they also work on community development. They do all of our grant management. A large portion of those grants do not flow through the foundation, but are captured on the medical center. So well over $5 million worth of grant revenue on the medical center that they support. This will take us through fiscal year 2020 or 2021.
Any questions for Sharon on this item? Mr. Powell?
Mr. Chairman, I would definitely make a motion for approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second by Ms. DeBose. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sharon. Dr. Duncan. Item C. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. As the board may remember, over the last year in community health, through huge collaborative efforts between our physicians, our nurses, and our operation leaders, along with the great district work that we've been doing, increasing access and improving the quality of care of our patients, over 50,000 additional visits were created last year across community health. And with that increase, we also saw, and with the improvement in our clinical efforts, we also saw increase, almost a double demand of mammography services. Last year at this time, on average, about 500 new orders were being dropped for annual screening, annual mammography screenings. This year, we're averaging around 1,500, so we have more than doubled that demand. And so as you can see, our volume really has stripped our capacity. And so we found it important to go out and look for new partners. And so we went through an RFP bid. We had 2 responses, and we had 2 presentations that were completed before a multidisciplinary team, which included our radiologists, our IT team, our finance team, our operations team, and before executives. We were really impressed with Assured Imaging. Their business model is mobile mammography, and we felt that they were closely aligned with our mission here. They were nimble in getting closer to our community so that we can earlier identify breast cancer in our patients and get them in for treatment. So with that, I come before the board to ask for your approval for our agreement between Assured Imaging and the district.
Karen, who's providing this now?
So we are partnered with Moncrief, They have both fixed and mobile that they're providing for us, and also Touchstone.
And so will we have mobile with this as well?
This is all mobile.
Please.
Assured
Okay.
will be all mobile,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Dr. Duncan?
I do, before y'all vote, I do want to point out the team behind Dr. Duncan, Jill and Leslie and Joy, the incredible work that they've done. And also, this was a challenge for us. And we've taken a challenge and turned it around to far greater care, far better service, and an advancement from where we were prior to that challenge. And it's bragging about Karen Duncan, and it's bragging about her team, and it ultimately puts forward the patient and what we're trying to do on mammography, trying to advance our technologies, which we've done. We just signed the PSA with Moncrief, which cements that partnership and the beginning of that partnership. Next week, we'll be opening up the new facilities, which will double our space. And when you go and tour that facility, I think you'll be incredibly impressed. So my compliments to Karen Duncan and her team. It has been relentless, their efforts to enhance where we were and make up the differences from challenges that JPS faced. I'm proud of her and her team.
Thank you, Robert.
Great.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Can you hit your microphone, please?
How long, if Dan were to enter an order today for a screening mammogram, how long would it take to be?
Jill, want to come on? So I'm going to introduce Jill, who really has all the information stored much better than I do. Jill is our Executive Director of Community Health Nursing. She has been with JPS for about a year and a half now. She has really elevated the practice of nursing in community health. She also oversees our Cancer Center and our Women's Health Center, our mammography services, too. Jill, I'm going to brag a little bit on you. She has been awarded the Gold Stethoscope Nurse of the Year Award.
Fantastic.
She's no slacker. She's not a piper.
She
man. Put the good ones in.
I tell you, she is amazing. I mean, I could really spend this whole session really talking about what she's done over the last year. It has been
So you're the
truly
winner-
impressive.
You're the winner for this year?
Yes, sir.
So we'll see it on next week then.
We'll start the wave.
Proud of
Yeah. So to Dr. Duncan's point, we have more need than we have capacity currently. We have maximized our partnership currently with Moncrief and Touchstone. They offer us about 1,000 slots per month, and we have about 18,000 per year that's a need, plus our backlog. So to answer your question about how long it takes to get one, right now that's a challenge, and that's why we have sought out this extra partner, because we are not able to fulfill those needs. And we know for our patient population, they're late to get diagnosed for breast cancer in Tarrant County, and so this would help shore that up and ensure that we're getting timely screenings for our patients. The other great point about Assured is, again, bringing it to the patient. So we'll be able to be in the community more instead of having our patients come to these various imaging centers across Tarrant County.
And so with Assured, we do have a one-year contract. We do see that we're going to be able to work our current queue and be able to take the real-time demand that we are currently receiving. So we hope within a year that we will be able to, our goal, if you ask me, is that when that mammogram is ordered by the provider, they will actually leave with their appointment.
Due to the increased access.
Why don't you come back in a year and tell us how that's going?
I know. We do. We feel very confident about that.
Good.
Well, part two for that next year's presentation. Once an abnormality has been found with screening mammograms, how long would it take to get in for the diagnostic?
So we have open access to our diagnostic. We have same-day access.
We have
Same-day access.
Diagnostic.
And so it's a requirement that they then, follow up and notify us that this patient needs a diagnostic, and then we are collaboratively working together to get that patient in for their diagnostic screening here in our center.
Good.
And we have set KPIs with Assured that, in which we're looking at timeliness and reports receiving those reports so that we are able to quickly get them into diagnostic and treatment if needed.
Hey,
Good,
that's good news. Yeah.
thank you.
That's awesome. Thank
Good
you,
deal.
Jill.
And congratulations again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any further questions?
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Petty, second by Ms. DeBose. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you
Thank you very
both
much.
very much.
Good report.
Celia. Item D.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to present for your review and approval a contract for the interlocal cooperation agreement between Fort Worth Independent School District and Tarrant County Hospital District. Currently, Fort Worth ISD provides teachers for our patients on the adolescent unit, so that they don't miss their educational needs, which is a huge social determinant of their success thereafter. This contract does not cost this hospital district any money, and it's been a wonderful partnership with Fort Worth ISD. And so this is a new contract, but we've had several renewals over the previous contracts.
Got it. Any questions for Zelia?
Move
This is
approval.
great. Ms. DeBose moves for approval, second by Mr. Powell. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Good
you.
deal, thank you. I like something that crosses my mind, says something to the community. Didn't cost anybody
Kitty Carr.
anything. I like those. Morning, Kenny.
Good morning.
I'm here to present for your review and potential consideration for the approval. This is a sole source exemption and with an addendum to the Seaboard software. This is an integrated solution on our Seaboard platform, and it allows us to integrate payroll deductions throughout our system in a standard way. And we did look at other options in regards to who could actually supply this solution for us, and there was not another one. We would have to, if we did do this, we would have to integrate the whole entire system and not just these little pieces.
Right.
I know that is important to this group, and I wanted to make sure that I commented on that.
Right. Okay, any questions for Kitty on this?
I do have a question.
Yes,
Did you say that you would have to, do we already have this technology in-house?
So this Seaboard, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
This was a universal platform that a lot of hospitals utilize for their nutritional services.
Okay.
And it does a lot more than just this.
Okay.
This is just an addition to it. Great
Okay.
question.
All right,
That's
okay.
already here.
All right, because that makes sense with, if it's already here, when I saw the letter from the person saying that they were the best, I'm thinking, well, yeah, you would be the best if you're trying to get our business, but you're already here, okay.
They better be the best, they've already got our bid.
Right, it must be. So this is a two-part motion. One is for the exemption for competitive bid, and the other is for the actual contract itself. So whoever wants to make that motion, I'm entertaining motions at this time. Not everybody at once. Okay, Dr. Weber has moved two-part motion, and then Mr. Petty has seconded. All in favor of the motions, please say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Carr. Ms. Peebles.
Is that it? Is it there?
Good morning.
Morning.
I am here this morning to ask your consideration for the approval, excuse me, of a sole source exemption and a purchase agreement between CryoLife. This is for heart valves. This is a request from Dr. Kripati for this particular heart valve. This is specifically for we have some very non-compliant patients who are not always as good as they should be about taking their anticoagulants, and this particular valve helps with that. It has some electrolysis in the carbon fiber of the mechanical valve, which prevents abnormal layers of fibrovascular tissue and granulation. So that is why he's requesting this particular valve. It is actually costs less than our current valves, which we pay about $5,800 a piece for, and this one's only $4,100.
Okay.
So it is a cost savings. It would not be for every patient,
Right.
but it would be for our younger, maybe more non-compliant patients.
Okay. Any questions for Wanda in this? So I notice it also includes BioGlue, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds really cool.
It's kind of like super glue that you just.
BioGlue? Yeah. Wow. I can imagine what that means.
With a much larger. They're BioGlue, but it is looping it all in there and giving us better pricing for that as well.
Got it. So this is a two-part motion as well, exemption from competitive bid and for the contract itself. So I entertain motions. So motion by Dr. Ziegler,
Second.
second by Mr. Bose. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Wanda. The Mr. Mendenhall Show. I'm so proud of you. I didn't know if you knew how to tie one, so I'm impressed.
It's a clip.
We're all right.
Item G.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me just a little bit of flexibility, that these first three contracts are a little interwoven. I just want to kind of frame it up the right way so then we can kind of go through the approvals. And we'll approve them one at a time, but there's some interlocking here that I think helps to frame up why we're coming today. So Upland Software is an organization we've been using for about 5 years to manage our project management portfolio that we have within IT. We manage currently 97 in-flight projects, so you have to have a software package to help you manage resources and so on and so forth. At the beginning of this fiscal year, we went out and we had budgeted for it to go out to RFP for a new project management portfolio system to replace potentially Eclipse, as well as an IT financial management system to help us with the $30 million worth of OpEx spend that we go through on an annual basis, as well as a telecom expense management system. And so we went out to that RFP independently of each other, and just unbeknownst to us, Upland has all three of those packages. And that was very, very good. The other people that came in to respond to that RFP were 5 times the cost of Upland on each one of those things. Upland obviously wanted our business and wanted to combine and say, here's a bundled price for all 3 of these opportunities. But when we looked at it, we got great pricing, but we wanted the flexibility to be able to say we wanted to terminate each one of these software packages if it doesn't meet our needs independently. So hence why there's 3 contracts as opposed to just 1 contract for 3 separate modules. So I just wanted to frame that up so
That's
everybody
helpful.
have a little bit of line of sight to that. The first one that is there is for an IT financial management system to be able to help us manage the $30 million worth of OpEx spend that we have per year. The reason why that's important, and in fact, during the proof of concept for this that we brought in, we already found about $250,000 worth of opportunity that we can start eliminating once we start going through this process. So that was a really good pickup. So that contract is in front of you for your approval.
Fantastic. So you need software to manage your software?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Just being clear on that.
Absolutely. It's seamless and redundant.
So item G is for consideration first. I'll entertain any questions for David on any of these?
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Powell, second by Mr. Petty on item G. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Item H.
Great. So the next one is for that Eclipse Software, which is our project portfolio management system. We did have a competing bid, which was really interesting because on my 4th contract is from a company called Carasoft. Carasoft bid on this particular RFP as well for this, and they were going to be between $350,000 to $400,000 for this exact same product. And so that's when we decided this is probably a really good deal that we're paying for, but this is for your consideration to approve this contract as well.
Okay. Any questions for David? Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Bose, second by Mr. Powell. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, motion passes.
The
Item I.
next one is for, excuse me, a telecom expense management system. This one's really important to the district right now because of some of the tariffs that have went away. So maybe you don't know this, but the Texas DIR is the Department of Information Resources, where we spend a lot of our time doing research on competitive bid opportunities for either software, hardware, or services for IT. AT&T was part of the Texas DIR, and we were getting close to 70% off of tariff prices from AT&T when they were part of that. 2 years ago, they exited that, and we've had a ramp up in our telecom expenses since that time. So we've been going out to the market, trying to find new ways to be able to get those same services from other organizations, and now we have close to 7 partners that we work with, but being able to pare down which one's giving us the best opportunities, it's extremely difficult to do. This particular software management can bring in all those invoices, all the competitive bids for us. And again, we've already witnessed, just in the proof of concept, over $100,000 in savings, just bringing in all of those into one consolidated view for us. So we're looking forward to more additional savings as we get that moving forward.
Fantastic. Great. Any questions for David on this item?
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Petty,
Second.
second by Mr. Bose. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And finally, this is an agreement to renew our software with ServiceNow. Carasoft is the DIR respondent for and the reseller of ServiceNow. And so that's why this contract is between the hospital district and Carasoft. ServiceNow is a system that we use in IT to manage all of our requests and all of our incidents. We take over 300 calls to the help desk every day. We have 200 people that manage all of those requests throughout all of IT, and this is the system that manages all that workflow. We've been using the ServiceNow platform now for 4 years.
300 calls a day.
Yeah.
300 calls a day.
Internally.
That's internally, but that also doesn't take into account, we also manage the MyChart system externally. So patients are about 70 calls a day into our MyChart hotline. And then when you take a look at the things that don't come through our help desk and come through just informal emails and so on and so forth, that's another subset of that as well.
Wow. It's a high volume. Okay, any questions for David on this? Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Bose, second by Mr. Powell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Item 7, report from Legal Counsel. Any items to report, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Yes, there were 36 contracts negotiated on behalf of the hospital district under $500,000. They're on your board portal for your review.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Cummings? All right, we don't have anything in closed, do we? We do not. All right, there being no further business, we are adjourned.
Okay.